Yo, what is up guys, it's Luke and here is my review of the OnePlus 7 Pro. So the OnePlus 7 Pro has been generating a lot of hype in the last few weeks. In fact, it kind of overshadowed the Pixel 3a's launch. So what makes this phone so great and why is it so popular? Well, the history of OnePlus has always been centered around making a bang for your buck device, and it's no different with the OnePlus 7 Pro. Now yes, this is the most expensive phone they have produced, coming in at around $670, but compared to the current market, this is still pretty affordable. Now in order to cut back on costs, OnePlus did cut a few features such as wireless charging and no official waterproofing for the phone, but with the inclusion of warp charging and an AMOLED display, I can forgive these areas. So then the question still remains, how is this device good? And I think the answer to this lies in the balance of the phone. There are several great things about the phone that kind of outweigh the bad, and coupled with the competitive price point, it drives a pretty hard bargain. Now obviously most people are going to start talking about the display, but I want to take a look first at the form factor and the design. OnePlus 7 Pro did ship with multiple colors, but the one that I've been using for the past few weeks is the Nebula Blue model. And while this phone lacks in grip, it's still one of the best looking phones I've used to date. Now coupled with the iridescent soft touch glass back, the phone also has a very good feel in the hand. It's definitely a bit heavier to fit that larger 4000 mAh battery, but it's still around the same size of my iPhone 8 Plus while packing a massive display. Now the curved chamfered edges almost float seamlessly into the phone, and it's just genuinely nice to look at. This being said, it's still incredibly slippery, so you might want to grab a case or skin. D-brand, if you're listening, let's work something out. Not only is this phone beautiful to look at, but it's also incredibly fast. Like, too fast. I have never used a phone that has been this responsive. Now, part of that is due to the 90Hz display, but most of that performance is thanks to the included octa-core Snapdragon 855 processor with 6GB of RAM. Now, the other variants do come with 8GB and even 12GB of memory if you want it, but even with just 6, you're not going to notice a huge difference. Now, this is kind of impressive considering the Pixel 3's lineup only ships with 4GB of RAM and is more expensive. The point is, the phone is wicked fast, and at this price point, it's definitely worth it. Alright, so it's probably pretty obvious by now, but my favorite feature of the OnePlus 7 Pro is that beautiful QHD AMOLED 90Hz 6.6-inch display. This is probably the main reason you should buy this phone. Now, before all of you guys jump in the comments and tell me that you don't need a 90Hz display, I know, of course you don't, but it's still nice to have. Seriously, this phone is just a joy to use because of those incredibly smooth animations and such a rich display. Now, one thing about the display you might not know is the ability to change color profiles based on preference. For me, the phone felt a bit too green and cold, but I was able to easily fix this with the customization profile. Now, the only slight, and I mean slight, drawback from the screen is that it doesn't have the best visibility in direct sunlight. Don't get me wrong at all though, it's still incredibly good and bright, just not as bright as other phones. Now, with that 90Hz display, you would probably assume that the battery life is not great, but fortunately this isn't the case. Now, although at first I was only getting around 5 hours of on-screen time, over the course of my time with the phone, it steadily got better. It was almost as if the phone got more and more battery life each day, as if it needed to learn. Now, I'm not entirely sure how OnePlus pulled this off, but now I'm averaging to 6 to 7 to even 8 hours of on-screen time a day. Battery life did improve with a few updates from OnePlus, so if you're experiencing something else, I would say just give it some time. Now, if you want to, you can switch over to 1080p at 60Hz, which should improve battery life overall, but that's like someone on Twitter said, that's kind of like buying a Mustang and then trying to save on gas. Why would you even do that? Even if you are experiencing some battery drain, the new warp charging should make up for this. Now, if you like the flash, well, this phone charges about as fast. In my day-to-day, I was able to easily get to 50% in 20 minutes and a full charge in just under an hour. Now, I don't know how OnePlus has pulled off this wizardry, but they did, and it just works. Not only does the OnePlus 7 Pro ship with a super fast processor, but also with a pretty dang good GPU. The Arduino 640 GPU is no chump and handles everything in its sleep. Now, gaming on the phone is incredibly fast and responsive, and surprisingly, I didn't notice a severe battery drain when doing so. Now, the OnePlus 7 Pro does have a few options for gaming, such as gaming mode and fanatic mode, but I've yet to use these, as out of the box, gaming is already great. Now, you've probably noticed by now, but the OnePlus 7 Pro ships with an in-display fingerprint sensor, and while at first I definitely had some inconsistency issues, after a few updates, the fingerprint works about 95% of the time. Now, one thing to note, for optimal success, it's more of a press than a rest on the phone, so if you have issues at first, try pressing in more. Other than that, the fingerprint is pretty dang fast, and I didn't notice a huge difference coming from Touch ID. Okay, so you're probably thinking that this sounds like the perfect phone, and it's pretty close to it. However, the main area that needs work is the camera. Now, the Pro ships with 3 lenses on the back and a motorized selfie camera on the front. The rear camera has a telephoto lens, normal, and a wide, and while this is really useful to have, produced shots from each are not the same. Now, of course, this is to be expected. The main shooter ships with 48 megapixels, the telephoto at 8, and the ultra wide at 16, but produced shots lack overall consistency. The cameras are definitely capable, but they seem to globally over-sharpen the image, and they all struggle with dynamic range. Now, this isn't to say you can't get good results, but like Zachary Anderson said over at Android Police, results are just inconsistent. You can't always trust the camera, and that's why it's the area that needs the most work. In terms of specifics though, the main lens produces rich contrast images with good detail and decent exposure. Now, the ultra wide, however, seems to be a bit soft and washed out, and the telephoto is actually pretty good. As far as portrait mode goes, the OnePlus 7 Pro does a pretty good job of grabbing accurate edges for both the selfie and rear cameras. However, the blur almost seems like you are shooting at a far higher aperture, basically meaning that photos don't really look like real shallow depth of field coming from a camera. However, the telephoto lens actually produces some pretty good natural shallow depth of field results, and I started to default to it for macro and close-up shots. All in all, the issues with the camera can all be fixed with a software update, which I know OnePlus is tirelessly working on, and others have had better luck with an unofficial Google camera ports, so when that does officially get dropped, just keep an eye out for it. But if you're on the fence about getting the Pro, don't let the camera steer you away. It still produces more than usable images that can be actually really good. It just might take some time for the software to get better. Now, on a better note, however, the user experience of the device is stellar. When Oxygen OS first came out, I remember being impressed. Everything was fluid and simple, and that has pretty much remained true over the last 5 years. Today, Oxygen OS is as smooth as ever. I love the different gesture options and customizability that it offers, and if I had to choose a non-stock experience, I would definitely go with Oxygen OS. It's clean and well optimized, and this is the first time I've stuck with the default launcher. So, 2 things left to talk about. 1, the speakers on this phone are quite good. They are very loud and definitely give you a stereo, if not almost surround sound feel. There's actually a Dolby video preloaded onto the phone, which just blew me away. If you have it, you know what I'm talking about. Now, call quality is great, and there is no issue with the small speaker housed on the front. Second, the price is just right. I briefly mentioned this earlier, but at $670, you're going to be hard pressed to find a device with specs, performance, display, and battery life this good. I really hope other companies like Samsung and Google start to take note from OnePlus, because in my honest opinion, spending upwards of $1,000 for a phone is starting to get ridiculous. Well, as you can probably already tell, I just love this phone. I had the honor of being a part of the OnePlus 7 Pro lab testers, and I'm incredibly thankful to OnePlus for sending this out to me. However, if the phone wasn't sent to me, I still would have bought it, and I have now fully switched from my iPhone 8 Plus to the Pro, which is something I didn't think I would be saying for a very long time. If you like an affordable, quality experience, then the OnePlus 7 Pro is a no-brainer. That's going to wrap it up for this video. Thanks again to OnePlus for sending this my way. Feel free to check out the other lab reviewers' thoughts on the phone. This is Luke with Techno Minute, and until next time, peace.